Hey everybody, before we get into the podcast, I just want to let you know about our sponsor. It's a film called Sir John A. and the Curse of the Anyquenched. It's a fun film. You get it on Vimeo on demand right now for only $2.99. Check out curseoftheanyquenched.com.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Welcome to the Raiders of the Lost Commentary podcast.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
The unofficial commentary for your favorite
Get to the chopper!
and not so favorite films.
The famous comedian Arnold Braunschweiger.
Starring your hosts Adam and Matt.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Start your movie in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, this week on the podcast, I am joined by a special indie filmmaker guest, Matt Ralston. We're talking about his film, What We Don't Say. It's a feature film he made for only $6,000. I know. So just before we jump into it too far, I just want to say you can check this out on Amazon and Vimeo on demand. So yeah, let's get into it. Matt, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Decent. So we're talking about your film, What We Don't Say. I found a post that you made on Reddit in the Our Filmmakers that you'd made a film for around $6,000. Thought that was pretty interesting. I thought I should reach out, and there's obviously some things we can learn from you. But at first I thought I'd start off and just for you to introduce yourself and what you do in the business and a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Ralston, writer, director, producer by necessity. And I do all three of those things. I've been working at it for about 6 years now. So, in all fairness, still fairly in my infancy compared to others, but I feel like I'm starting to get a bit of a grasp and a voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. This What We Don't Say, is this like your first feature, or did you make something else before that, or shorts or whatnot, or?
Yeah, so I'll give you just like a rundown of my entire, filmmaking career thus far, I guess you could say. So I actually from Ottawa, or I was raised right outside it in Carleton Place, and I lived in Ottawa for 5-6 years where I played in a band. And the idea was to be a rock star. When that didn't pan out, I was like, the only thing I've ever loved is making movies. So I took a little course at a Saw Video downtown. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, yeah, no Saw.
Yeah, and it was like an 8-week course where we just met once a week on like Wednesdays for 4 hours. So it really wasn't even enough to truly educate you in film. But I knew that what it would tell me is if I liked it or not. And so I took the course, and thankfully I loved it. And being from the band, I saw like when we would do tours with the band and we'd do shows out of town, we would get a really good reception. And when we'd come back to Ottawa, it really wasn't there like that. So I thought, Vancouver apparently has a great movie scene. I'm going to move to where the big cities are. And I really hated winter. So I was like, BC it is.
Yeah.
And then, I got there and I started volunteering on film sets. I'd never really been on a real film set before, so I just started PAing and met people through that. Then I started producing shorts, all while writing my own scripts. And then I had a script called Party Stories, where I was like, okay, I think I can take a shot at directing. It was meant to be a feature. And when we had finished it, it was 58 minutes long. So it's kind of this really, it's in like as far as time count goes, it's in a failure territory, if I'm to be honest. Like 58 minutes. It's not a feature. It's definitely not a short. And it was never designed to be a pilot. So it's just this really like Frankenstein long short. But the good news that came from that was I learned how to make a movie. Like it was the first thing I directed. It was the first thing, and even more important than directing, it was the first thing that I had written that got brought to screen. So I always say like the biggest thing I learned is just what makes something on screen interesting, and I'm sure there are scenes here and there that I'll make in the future that won't be super, up to par, or I hope not at least.
Right.
But going from Party Story to What We Don't Say, I really felt like I learned how to make a movie, and more importantly, learned editing as well too, because the first time you're in an editing room, like really trying to break down this movie that's 60-ish or longer, it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, Party Story's finished, and I was looking at it and thinking like, do I send this off to festivals. Like, there are some good stuff in Party Stories, and I'll maintain that forever. But there's a lot of stuff that's just okay, and there's some stuff that's just straight up not good. And I was like, well, if I send this to festivals, like, I really don't think it's gonna do what we would want. So I could take that money, and I have this other idea for what became What We Don't Say. I was like, I could take that money and just make another movie. So that's what I did.
That's great, man. And I mean, all the power to you to just decide and say, like, I'm not going to wait for anyone to give me money, or I'm not going to wait to pitch to people. I'm just going to self-fund this myself, I'm assuming, and then just go and make it. And I can really relate to that, not waiting for somebody to say yes and just go make it. So you have this script, What We Don't Say, and so where did things start? Do you have a producer partner, or do you just start breaking down the script? Do you start casting right away, or did you have dreams for like a bigger budget and then things scale back down to a $6,000 budget, or?
So, well, to start, the guy I make movies with, Latif Ullah, he is my cinematographer, editor, and co-writer on this movie. So when we were finishing Party Stories, I went up to him and I said, hey, man, I've got another idea. And I pitched him What We Don't Say. He's like, yeah, I think this could really work. So we knew it was a love story. We knew how what the start was. We knew what the end was, but the middle was, still yet to be written. And since it was a love story, I was like, I just have this feeling that we should cast the leads before we write the script and really find people that can embody and kind of create these characters with us. So Cougar Vicarian, who plays Ben in What We Don't Say, was the lead in Party Stories as well, and he did such a great job that I just called him and I'm like, hey man, this is what's going on, do you want to be a part of it?
Casting from the pool of people that's good.
yeah he was stoked. He was like, yeah, absolutely. And I just knew like he was up to par enough as an actor that he could do it, and getting to know him, I knew his approach to everything, and he's a very intellectual guy, so I knew he could do it. So I didn't make him audition or anything. I was just like, do you want this part? And he jumped all over it. And then for the female lead of Juliet, we just put feelers out everywhere. I can't remember where she submitted from, but we met a bunch of actresses for coffee. And it was kind of funny because when I met her, like, we had her headshot, and I was like, she could work, I guess. And it just turned out that her headshot didn't look anything like she looked. So
that happens a lot, eh? Like, you meet people in the casting and you're like, wait, that's you?
Yeah. And not in like
not a bad way, but just in...
Yeah. So we met with her, and, at this point, it's just a pitch. We have nothing written. We have a beginning and end and kind of a general feel for the characters.
Okay.
So it's just us telling, beginning, end, throwing around possibilities of what could happen, and in the middle to, really bridge the beginning and the end, and just talking character. And it was pretty clear from her first meeting that was between her and another girl.
Okay.
But she had the right energy to her. So we hired her, and then just got off to writing. And with the two leads in tow, we just, through every draft, we would send it to them, meet up with them, talk with them, say, what do you think? And really base all the rewrites around their notes, our thoughts. And I tried to be pretty merciless with it. The first draft came out at 89 pages. Okay. So Latifah and I wrote the first draft. It was 89 pages. And then I did the subsequent drafts. And I remember we had the first draft, 89 pages. I sat on it for like 2 weeks. And then I opened up the document one day and I cut out 60 pages. All this is gone. And then we went up to 113 pages on that draft.
Okay. So you worked on it for a while then.
Yeah, from initial pitch to when we shot was just over 13 months.
And I will say, credit to your DP, Latif. This film looks expensive and it looks really legit shot. And I'm assuming, just like with him being a writer too, like he must have been thinking about shots and how you guys were going to execute these scenes and actually pull it off for, a minuscule budget.
Yeah, totally. Like, we've always been resourceful filmmakers, I guess. And initially we were set to the way we were going to write was we wrote the first draft together. I would do the second, he'd do the third, I'd do the fourth, he'd do the fifth. But once it came to the second, we were like, there's so much prep to do if we're shooting for no money that I'll tackle the writing and he'll go off and, we'll have our conversations. Then he'll go off and find out how we're going to shoot this. And the good thing about having him on through the entire thing, other than he's insanely talented, is we were always on the same page. And if we weren't, it was ironed out very early because, I'd write something, say, here's kind of what I'm thinking. And then he would say, it'll be difficult because of X, Y, and Z for me on this end. And we don't really fight or anything. Like, neither of us get angry, and we're all in this to make the best movie possible, not to inflate our egos. So working in that way, it was just very organic, and any potential issues we had were ironed out well before we got to set. Because I'm sure, as when you get to shooting, enough things are going to happen that are going to be difficult.
Exactly.
That you need to iron out everything you can before you start shooting.
Yeah, for sure. Walk me through a bit of that then, like the pre-production. Like, did you write with knowing you have locations in mind and like, oh, I can get these locations, sort of like the Rodriguez method, or did you sort of just have indescript locations and then whatever you could find, that's what you'll use, or?
A lot of the Rodriguez method, and also it just came to my head. I never answered your budget question.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The whole idea with this movie was, okay, I've got $6,000. Like, if we need to, we will shoot on that, and we think we can get it done. Obviously, we can make an even better movie with more money. So the approach we took was, let's prep this for $6,000, but have this alternate reality unwritten version that we've just talked about quite a bit in our head.
Right.
So if we get money, then we can just kind of easily switch over to that. But if not, then we're already prepping for this. And one of the things, you make a movie for $6,000. People are not doing this for a paycheck, right?
No.
So what I would tell people,
it's not an actor gig either.
Yeah, totally. But what I would tell people is like, look, here's what we have. And by the time we brought anyone on other than myself, Latif, and the two leads, we had a script, right? So I would say, here's the script. Like, you can tell the movie we're trying to make. For us, it feels like a festival piece. Like, I really think this is going to do well in festivals. And this isn't going to be a big paycheck for you, but I can promise you that one thing that will never happen is we will not get close to shooting and I'll tell you we don't have the money. Like, even if you're not getting paid, this is something that's going to get made. So, I'm very upfront with people. I don't like lying to people, and I really believe in the under promise, over deliver. So just kind of being very real with people and saying, even though you're not getting a paycheck, this will get made. And if you have just a little bit of faith in me, I bet you we can get a little bit of success with this.
Getting something made, regardless of budget, is its own challenge and achievement in and of itself. So, yeah, congrats to you for that. But
thank you.
Yeah, if you don't mind getting to specifics, then like where did that money get spent?
Yeah. So largely it was. I'll tell you the things we got for free first. So like most of the most of the locations were free. Like, we shot at my house, some friends' houses, and with that, like, if I'm ever asking someone, can I shoot at your house? It's not, can you go live somewhere for a week? I don't have anything to pay you, but just, go away for a while. I need your house for a week. It's, let me get in there while you're at work. I'll be gone by the time you get back, and I won't break anything. And most of the time they're like, yeah, that's cool. So we got a lot of our locations for free. We paid for a couple of them. There's a scene in a coffee shop. I threw them just a tiny little bit of money, but the owner was so nice that I went up to her and I said, I'm making this movie. I wrote the script, and this coffee shop's around the corner from my place. I kind of envisioned shooting it here. Like, would you let me do that? She's like, you want to shoot a movie here? That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, so she was pretty stoked. I gave her, what little I could, which wasn't much, but we paid for that. And then there's a sequence at a restaurant and a bar where luckily we found just one restaurant that we could fake into 3 different locations.
That's
so that was
too to talk about. Stretching your locations to be more than one place goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the most we spent on a location, and that was only $400. It worked out fairly well because on Mondays they closed at like 3 p.m. So we got in there at 4, and I told them we'd be out of there by midnight, which, all things said and done, I think we shot like 14 pages in there in 8 hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we were moving, but it was, this is what we have to do to get what we need. So locations, was, call it maybe $600 when all things were said and done. The vast majority went to food. Like, we had very small cast and crew, but still it was anywhere from 10 to 20 people a day. And when you're feeding that many people a day, I cooked every day as well, just to save money. Yeah. I would wake up at 3 a.m. and cook everyone lunch and everything.
God damn. Crazy.
It sucked, dude.
I will say too, if you're not paying people, the next best thing you can do is make sure they at least eat well, because that goes a long way too for just crew and cast morale.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think if you're not paying people, like, feed them well, get them coffee. I don't even drink coffee, so I got coffee. I don't know if it's terrible, but
you're waking up at 3 a.m. and you're not drinking coffee?
I've never had a coffee in my life.
No, eh? Well, good for you.
Yeah. But yeah, make sure your people are fed, and then just make sure you're giving them a good atmosphere. I think that's a good rule in general, but I don't yell at people. I never get mad. And the first AD, he can be very authoritative when it's time to shoot, but same thing, he will never yell or anything. So by doing that, everyone walked away thinking like, this is a really great experience. So not getting paid doesn't sting quite as bad,
That's true. And with this industry too, like, people kind of at least actors know there is a bit of that, doing it for free, and there is like a precedent for it. It's not like a huge ask. And if you're honest with people and just say like, look, I'm not making any money. I don't know if I will make any money, but do you want to try and make this thing?
Yeah, totally.
How many days?
On that note,
sorry.
On that note too, so the crew got paid a little bit, $6,000 movie, it's not going to be much. But for the cast, I said, I can't pay you right now, but if we do make money, which it's only $6,000, we might be able to recoup it. But if I do, then I will pay you a percentage.
Give them deferred payment, essentially, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I was pretty honest in saying, maybe it won't make money. There's a medium chance you're going to walk out of this $0 richer. Just be very upfront. But if it does make money, then of course I'll give you guys some.
I definitely want to get into that post end of things. So how many days did you spend shooting?
8.
8 days shooting. So that's a pretty packed schedule, and your script was around 100 and something pages. So you guys were shooting well over 10 pages a day. Do you want to talk about scheduling and what a day on set looked like?
Yeah, of course. I mean, each day was different, and we had night shoots and day shoots. So luckily we had an incredible first AD, Oliver Robertson. I'll love that guy till the day I die.
It's very important to have a good first AD on a set.
Yes, I could not agree more. So each day, like, another thing with not paying people is I didn't want to keep everyone for 16 hours. And since Latif and I really built this movie from the ground up, he was shooting it, I was directing and producing. Like, we really built it around what we thought we could do, and we thought we could do it in 8 days. Generally, as far as like rolling, it would be 10 to 12 hour days. Crew would show up a little bit beforehand. We didn't have a whole lot of equipment to set up, so it wasn't like 4 hours setting up each day. It'd be like 30 minutes to an hour, and then a little bit of a teardown at the end of the day. The last day we went a little bit longer, but one day we ended up getting rained out, so I think we only shot for 6 hours. But tried to keep them between 10 and 12 hour days, so fairly manageable. One of the most interesting things that we had happen on set was there's a scene in a furniture store, and I had lined up this furniture well before we shot, and then the day before we were set to go in there, we were shooting a scene that was at the fair, and I get a call from the guy that owns the store, and he's like, "Hey man, so my store just flooded, everything is destroyed, you can't get in here." So I was like, "Oh, okay, great." So I had a producer who largely just helped on set kind of thing. Her name was Jen Rupp, and she was great. I turned to her, I'm like, "Jen, get a phone book, call every fucking furniture store in that phone book. We need somewhere to shoot tomorrow morning." She's like, "Okay." And she came up to me like an hour later. She's like, "I got a furniture store. It's a little out of town. They say they open at 9. They'll have someone there at 7:30. We can be in there for an hour and a half." And I'm like, "Well, that's all we got. That's all we got." So we showed up the next day at 7:30. Whoever they sent there was late by like 25 minutes. So they let us in, and as soon as we get in there, we're like, the scene we wrote does not fit this furniture store. It's like, give me
No.
5 minutes, guys. So I rewrote the scene in like 2 minutes. I'm like, here's what we're shooting, go. And we just shot it. And thankfully, it actually ended up being a pretty good scene of the movie. A lot of people comment on it, and they're like, oh, I like that one. I thought it was really funny.
That's
So,
great.
no.
You got to really think on your toes like that, especially on such a small scale, right?
Yeah.
That's great, man. And so coming along like production, like did you guys have to do any reshoots? Did you guys get it all in one go, or like how did that
Yes. Yeah, so I was going to touch on reshoots. It's 8 days for principal, and then we had technically like a air quotes 9th day. I somewhat count it because I think we shot we were together for like 6 hours, but we had a 3-hour lunch where we watched Rick and Morty. Like we were goofing off a fair amount. So as far as a reshoot day, like it was very minimal. It was just kind of get this one angle, and then we had a little cell phone video at the end that we threw in there. So it really
Right.
wasn't a ton of reshoots.
Right. And now walk me through some of the locations. Like you were able to shoot at the fair. Did you guys shoot that kind of guerrilla style, or did you have permission to shoot there, or?
No, we looked into getting permission, but it was like $10,000.
Holy shit. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
so that brings up another topic of like, what did you guys shoot this on? Because like, I'm assuming you weren't walking through a fair with like a red Epic on your shoulder, or were you?
So we shot on a Sony FS5, which thankfully, like, it doesn't really look like a super high-end camera, even though you can get some just amazing images out of it. So we guerrilla shot. We just kind of went in. It was actually kind of funny because we went into that fair when they had like a Halloween thing going on.
Okay.
And when we went in, like they searched the shit out of our bags and everything. So when we went to shoot the movie there, we were like, we got to be so incognito. So we packed our bags so you couldn't really see the camera, and the sound guy packed his laughs away and like hid them in a pouch. And we're walking through like sweating bullets. Like if they stop us here, we're screwed. We got to figure something else out. So we paid the fee and walk up to the guy at the gate. He's like, yeah, go ahead. And
Yeah, he makes minimum wage. He doesn't care if you're trying to shoot a movie.
yeah, totally. So like we didn't bring a boom mic or anything that would really, really make us stick out. There was a couple times where people would be like, hey, look, those guys over there have a camera. So we'd be like, let's just go shoot something else for a couple minutes.
Right. You draw a lot of attention.
Yeah, but we entirely guerrilla shot it. It kind of goes back to planning. So the two scenes in the movie that we planned the most were the fair and the beach scene, because we were guerrilla shooting them both, right?
Right.
And if you don't do that kind of planning and you say, oh, it's just a fair, let's just go shoot some stuff, then it might come back to bite you in the ass, right? But we had scouted the fair and the beach so many times for different projects that we knew we could go in and get what we needed. The only questionable part for the fair was sound, but when we got in there and we picked our spots well enough, the sound actually ended up being really, it worked.
So you didn't have to do any ADR or anything like that for sound on the fair or anything like that.
Fun fact: there is 0 ADR in the entire movie.
That's great. That's great, man. That's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So yeah, obviously shooting in those locations, like it buys you a lot of production value, and especially on like a smaller film, every bit of extra money you can make it look like it's on the screen goes a long way. Did you run into any problems like with distro, like not having like a permit for any of those places, or have you run into that problem yet?
Nope.
Or should I cut this part out of the podcast?
No, honestly, I kind of thought about that as well. But again, I did some research beforehand, and like we didn't show logos or anything like that, because that they can get you for. But if you go guerrilla shoot something and later they're like, you shouldn't have done that, they can't hold up your movie or anything.
No,
right?
I guess not.
There's no copyright there. And realistically, like once you've gotten out of there, as long as you're not filming like a faux murder or something like that, no one's going to really care.
Right. I guess like the other movie there, the one that was shot in Disney, the horror movie, they had that countdown, right? Like days we haven't been sued by Disney, and I think Disney just like released a statement, something to the effect like, we're aware of it, but whatever, we're not going to bother going through with a lawsuit just to give them more press,
That's the whole thing, right? And in that case, they did it really, really smart because they're basically baiting them. They're like, yeah, sue us.
Come
It'll be
on,
great for
do
us.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Everyone will be so pissed at the mega corporation that's suing the little guy, and we'll
Yeah.
get tons of press. This is great.
Exactly. So you get through production. Did you guys, aside from like the furniture store, was there any big hiccups other than that, or did it all go pretty smoothly? Did you feel good about it after you shot it?
Yeah, I mean, there's always hiccups, right? Like one of the, I try not to ask the question of like, if I could go back and do it differently, what would I do? Because at the end of the day, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
But I remember the only times I was kind of disappointed with what we had on set. The big one is extras. Like if you're doing
It's
a
so
movie
hard.
for no money, even your buddies, like they'll come out one day, but if you need them for 2 or 3, you're pushing it.
Yeah.
So there's 2 scenes. We have a concert scene, which we actually managed to make it look pretty populated. And then there's a scene where there's a house party, and every time I watch those scenes, no one's ever commented on it, but I'm like, I know if we had a couple more bodies, this really would have went quite a long way.
Yeah, I share in that sentiment too. It is tough, and even if you offer to pay people, like just getting people to come and sit and do nothing for the day, or just interact on repeat in the background, like I don't know. There's a reason why there's extra unions, you know?
Yeah, you know what was weird? Like one of the first things I ever did was just volunteer to be an extra, and I remember going into it because I was coming from the band, like playing in a rock band, right? So I was like, cool, this is a real movie set. They have cameras. That guy's a director, and there's actors. And, you know, you just kind of do whatever they tell you in the background for a couple hours. And then they'll cut on a take, and they're like, okay, it's lunchtime. And the people I had gotten to know, I was like, well, let's go grab a bite to eat. And they're like, grab a bite to eat? They bring food in. I was like, we get fed? What?
That's funny, man.
Yeah, and you know, that's just because I have such a huge interest in movies. To ask the average person, like, do you want to come sit in this chair for 4 hours and pretend to talk to nothing? You know, I could see why people wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough ask. So you guys get out of production, and then so your DP, who is also your editor. So are you involved at all in the editing process? Does he start right away, or are you kind of like over his shoulder a bit? Like, walk me through a bit of that.
Yeah. So as far as the like rough cut, where he literally, you know, he organizes all of his stuff. I don't need to be there for that, and then he just throws takes together for the first rough cut. I wasn't there for any of that. Also, before I keep going with that, the one thing that you learn going through editing, especially editing a feature, is there's a Scorsese quote that is, if you aren't physically sick watching the first cut of your movie, you've done something wrong.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
both times I've had a first cut, I'm like, this is the worst fucking pile of shit I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. You need I found you need a small win right after that. So if you know that's going to be bad going into it, you need like some type of small win just so you don't like give up on it, or, you know, jump off your balcony or something.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And for us, that small win was the montage bit in the fair. Latif cut that together, and you know, montages, they're a lot easier to put together in a lot of senses compared to, you know, straight scenes where you're cutting between things and whatnot with dialogue. So when he cut together that montage at the fair, I was like, okay, this is going to change a bit, but I feel good about this part. And then, you know, so after the rough cut, I was there every second we cut anything. So I was still working a day job. My day was wake up at 5 a.m., do whatever work I needed to do before going to the day job, which was 7 to 5. And then I'd get off work, shower, and go edit till midnight. And that was brutal, especially because, yeah, in editing, your eyes get so tired. Like, I've seen this scene 10,000 times in 1,000 different variants.
It loses its sort of like you lose sort of touch of it and like or scope of the scene. I've heard of people putting the timeline in its own separate thing and then flipping the screen, so it's like you're watching something new. I don't know if you've ever tried anything like that. I've never had to resort to that. I've never gotten that desperate, But I know what you mean. Like you end up looking at something, and you're like, I don't know if this is good or if this is good or if I'm just used to this now. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that if you didn't have it, like I know a couple filmmakers, well, I don't know them, I've spoken to them briefly, where I've seen their movies through various means, and they'd say, yeah, we felt really good through the entire thing. No self-doubt, no doubt in the movie, just like it was great. We did a couple cuts and it was, it's good. And then you watch it, you're like, oh, you could have used a couple more cuts and a little more self-doubt.
yeah. Self-doubt goes a long way.
It does. I think it's very critical. And like, don't get me wrong, it feels terrible at some points. You genuinely think you made a disaster, but you keep carving away at it and trying to refine it. And it'll come out well in one way or another. But yeah, that self-doubt can hurt from time to time.
Yeah, it can also stop you from finishing a project. And so on that topic, like, how did you guys get to the point where you're like, okay, we got to lock this cut? Did you guys have any deadlines in mind, or was there just a point where you felt like this is the best we can do with what we have? Or
so we did have a deadline. I was moving to Ireland the following May.
Oh, cool.
And so we finished Canada Day, and the next May I was moving to Ireland. So I was like, we got 10-ish months. We can make it work in 10 months. So we did 6 cuts of it, the rough cut, which, arguably counts. And then the other 5, we did 3 cuts, or no, 2 cuts together. And then Latif went off, did whatever he wanted in like an editor's pass. Then I went and did whatever I wanted in a director's cut. And then we just sat and we watched both of them and we said, okay, here's what's better from Latif's version, here's what's better from my version, here's what we can take from both and make into something. Because the bottom line for anyone working on any project I do is I only have 3 rules: be good at what you do, want to do it, and don't be an asshole. And this is gonna go great. So like, as long as we're all here to make the best movie possible and not pump ourselves up, then we truly can't lose, right? So like, when we have this editor cut and this director's cut, we're looking at them as dispassionately as possible. So if Latif says like, here's why I prefer mine, I think yours in scene 14 is really bad in X, Y, and Z, then if you don't really look at it from a stance of ego, you can say, okay, what is best for this movie? Then I think you always get a win out of that. So from those two cuts, we just decided what was best for the movie in the 6th cut, and then watch it one more time, make sure there's no frames that have to go there or anything like that, because at that point you're not taking out scenes or anything like that,
right? You're just adjusting, fine-tune adjusting things.
Yeah, so make sure everything's tuned, lock picture, and then send it to sound people and everyone that does their thing.
Yeah, so that's the next thing I wanted to get into. Like, did you guys send this off to get like a mix done somewhere? And the other thing is the grade is really nice on the film. I really like that. And did Latif have because he shot it, did he have input on that, or did you just send it off to a colorist and let them do what they wanted? Or
Latif color graded the entire thing, actually.
Oh, did he? Wow,
yes.
Good for him. So he had like a huge creative input just as much as yourself in the film.
Yeah, definitely. As far as visuals go, it was definitely a 50-50 thing. Like once, like I mentioned, we did the first draft of the script together, and then I did all the subsequent ones. So as far as like the scripting, I would say that it's a lot more of my voice than his. But when you get to strict images and color and stuff like that, it was at least 50-50, if not leaning a little bit more towards Latif.
Yeah, eh?
Yeah.
And then so when you came down to do like a sound mix, the other thing I was curious about, like with music, did you work with a composer did you work with like temp tracks and then give the composer like a temp track and then you want something like that, or were they giving you music early on? I know you said you were in a band. Did you provide any music for it? Or?
No, I'm thoroughly done with music. I never want to do anything with music again.
Fair enough.
So the sound, I'll do sound then music. Sound was actually pretty interesting because I think we locked picture in middle to late January. So we had, 3 months to go before I moved in. And I had said, like, no matter what, we're showing this to the cast and crew before I leave. It's going to be finished before I leave, because how do you finish a movie when you're on the other side of the planet, right?
Right.
So we had a sound person locked in from before we even started shooting. It was someone Latif knew. She came from the music world, but she was like, yeah, I did a couple short films in sound school, whatever that was.
Right.
And I really want to try doing a feature. And she was on board for getting paid very little. So I was like, yeah, cool. So we finished the movie and I sent it to her. And I didn't hear anything back for like a week or 10 days. And then I was like, hey, what's going on with that? She's like, yeah, just had some stuff going on. I'm going to do a first pass of it in the next couple of days. I'll get back to you. And then another week goes by, nothing. So I message her. She's like, okay, I got to admit something to you. I think I bit off more than I could chew here. I really don't think I'm capable of this. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that you're at least being honest with me. Like, there's no point in freaking out. It's not going to gain anything. But I was like, now I got to figure this out. And thankfully, she actually had a friend. She's like, she's done, all these shorts. I think she had done a feature before. So I contacted her. Her name's Esther Gad. And yeah, she watched the movie. She's like, I really like this. Can I please do it? I'm like, as long as you're okay with this little amount of money.
Right.
And yeah, she was on board. So she did the sound. She killed it. And as far as I'm concerned, any movie I ever do, she's going to be doing post sound on it. She really was fantastic.
Did you guys have like a Foley pass, or did you have any sound effect pass like that you had done already and she just mixed it, or did she just take your dialogue track and your music and then she did it all herself?
We had a couple. We didn't have any Foley, but we had some sound effects, like I call them temp sound effects, that we'd put in there while editing.
Right.
There's like someone gets punched in the head in the movie, so we had a temp punch sound. So anything like that. But as far as sound effects or adding anything that could enhance the movie, I was like, look, I am open to anything. Just tell me before you do it, and here's a list of what I think should go in there. If you think it's good, great. If you don't think it's good, then let's talk about it. If we decide it's not good, we'll do something else. Or if we talk about it and you're like, yeah, it is good, then we'll go with it, right? So it's always a very open communication, and I try and work with that like that with everyone.
Did you bother doing a 5-1 pass, or did you just like stay with a stereo pass?
Just stereo.
Yeah, 5-1 can be a little complicated, and like I know, like myself, like even if it's just a stereo quote unquote film, some distributors will be like, wow, just get the guy in the mix to put the ambience in the back channels, because to distributors sometimes that looks better, like, oh, it's got a 5-1, even though the whole film is just stereo, and you're just putting ambience tracks in the background,
Yeah, totally. And initially I'd looked into getting a 5-1, but after getting some quotes, which we definitely couldn't afford, and just talking to people, I'm like, I don't think we need it. Like, there's certain movies where you absolutely need it 100%, but I don't think this is it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. So that all sounds pretty serendipitous, and especially with, like, I'll say, like, having Latif do all your color grade, like, that saves you a lot. As someone who spent like hours in a color suite before, like, you could spend a lot of time and lose a lot of time in there, trying to get colors right, or just trying to get whatever moods right for scenes.
Yeah, totally. And like, as far as color goes, it's a massive amount of input from Latif as well. But like, we had done mood boards and everything. We watched a bunch of reference films before we started writing the first draft. And so color and look and all that was something we talked about for well over a year before we even shot it. So by the time it came to the color grade, like, he went and did his thing, and when he sent it to me, it was like very, very minor notes, like, this black is that, this should be a little brighter, that should be this. But building it in that way, we were on the same page that so much that it made it pretty easy.
That's great. Did you guys have a big premiere, or did you guys get this into a festival early on enough that you're able to have like a festival premiere, or?
So first, I just want to mention the music real quick first.
Oh yeah, sorry, we skipped right over that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So that one was actually pretty interesting, because I was just looking for temps. Like background songs. So there's a scene where people are in a cab, and I needed some background music for that. So I just posted something on like Facebook, musician, whatever. And this guy messages me, and he's like, hey man, so I'm a part of a band. Here's my links, but I'd really love to score your movie. And
Oh,
we
cool.
had someone that was set to score it that kind of wasn't really vibing all that well. So I listened to this guy's stuff, and I'm like, listen, man, I think it's really great. It was a band called Her Brothers out of Vancouver. They're a pop band,
Okay.
which they're actually very talented. But I was like, look, man, here's what's going on. We don't have a whole lot of money. I really, really dig your sound. There's this other composer that, he's tried a few things, but it's not what we want. And I think everyone's feeling that. So if you're down for it, like, yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to have you guys on. He's like, yeah, that would be great. I really want to try doing movies. Like, he'd never scored anything before. He just had his band. And he's like, I'd love to give it a go. So he did, him and his brother, and yeah, turned out really, really well.
Neat. Yeah. The score really, really comes through, and it fits the vibe of your film too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get the film done. Like, are you doing like a premiere? Do you have distribution or where you're gonna make the film live at any point, or?
No, we didn't have any of that. Like, from the start, we had said this feels like a film festival movie. Like, I think festivals are going to dig it. So we just started firing off to film festivals. Looking back at it, that's one thing I could have researched a little bit more.
There's so many like, I don't know about you, but when I'm on Film Freeway every now and then, I'm like, is this a real festival or is this a scam?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much. There's so many of them that I've applied to and never heard from, or then like you get in, but it's like, well, now it's like everything's online, but then they're like sort of an online film festival. It's like, did we just pay $35 to have some fake laurels on our poster, or?
Yeah, totally. And my general rule was like anything that isn't 5 years old, I didn't even bother with.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then once you apply it, like just research it, right? So yeah, we just kind of researched what we thought we could get into and what we would fit with. Looking back at it, we should have well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm a big believer in if you like the present, you can't hate the past. So, and I am happy with the present, but we ended up having our premiere in this tiny festival in Texas called Fort Worth Indie Film Showcase.
That's kind of fun, though. If you go all the way down to Texas, get some barbecue.
Yeah, I didn't get to go, unfortunately. It was right when I moved to Ireland, so I didn't have the funds to fly to Texas from Europe.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, it actually ended up being pretty good because for our first festival going there, the movie going there, we won Best International Feature, which was very, very nice. It was a good
being
starting
Canadian
off point. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then after that, I think we got accepted to a dozen of them at the end of the day. Some of them are really, really tiny. Like, I think the tiniest one was something called Prisma something Awards. It was in Rome. Like,
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like realistically, I don't even know if the movie played on a screen there.
Did you get to go to any of the festivals?
Yeah, so we went to the biggest one we played at in terms of status was Calgary International.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we went there, and I was actually lucky enough to get nominated for Best Emerging Artist of Canada. It's an RBC award. We didn't win, but just, being thrown into the ringer for an award like that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool, man.
Yeah, so we went to Calgary for there. We had 2 screenings, which was awesome as well. Did Q&As at both of them. And through all the festivals I went to, I taught seminars on how to make a movie for no money. So Calgary, I taught that there as well. And then we went to Full Bloom Film Festival in, I want to say, South Carolina. One of the Carolinas in Statesville. Yeah, and that's one that I actually preach about. I recommend that to anyone. They are fantastic. I met people that I still plan to collaborate with and I'm in touch with to this day from there. When you go down, you don't pay for anything aside from airfare. Like, you land at the airport, they pick you up, they set you up in accommodation, feed you everything. The people there are really, really great. I taught the seminar there as well, and we ended up walking away with Best of Fest, which is fantastic.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and then we played at the only other one I went to was Yonkers Film Festival in New York, which was
very cool.
Really, really good experience as well.
Very cool, man. So you got to tour and see a bit of the States and different parts of the world with the film too, which is kind of like an added bonus.
Yeah, totally. And I think there were 8 or 9 like other real festivals that we played at that we didn't get to go to. There was one in India that I actually wanted to go to, and one in Tokyo as well, but it just didn't
That would have
end up
been
happening.
cool.
Yeah, it was actually.
I would have come up with the money. I'm like, when am I ever gonna go to India or Tokyo? You know?
Well, what's funny is that one was in January of this year. It was the last festival, I think the
Oh,
last festival we played at. But I was already in Asia at that point. I was traveling Asia when this coronavirus hit.
oh shit, dude.
But we were in Tokyo and the festival was 2 weeks later, but my wife and I had planned everything, so we couldn't move it. And we were in the Philippines when it played in Tokyo, which would have been really cool to see.
Very cool. But
Yeah.
obviously,
And then
everything in the world went to shit, and
yeah, we had to fly home emergency. We were flying from Cambodia to Laos, and we get to the airport, give them our passports, and they're like, nope, can't enter Laos. I'm like, why not? And they're like, everything's shut down. And we had kind of known like there's a medium chance we're gonna have to fly home last minute, because it was strange with the way we did our trip. The virus is almost like 3 weeks behind us, and it just happened to the world went to shit when we were in Cambodia. So we had to book a last minute flight home, spent 3 days in airports.
brutal.
Yeah, it was fun.
Brutal. Yeah, I think about like before COVID hit, I was in Amsterdam, like,
Oh, really?
middle of February. It wasn't even on the radar there. Flew out of the big airport there, and and then like a week later, like we were under lockdown. It was, I don't know, it's
What were you
strange.
doing in Amsterdam?
Just just bumming around.
That's cool.
So that all being said, like your decision to release a film during COVID, do you want to walk me through a bit of your decision process with that? And I guess another thing to talk about too is like while you're at all these film festivals, were you being approached by distributors or aggregators or anything of the sort like that?
No, we weren't being approached much. Like we found our sales agent at the film festival we went to in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I met him. And the thing you have in mind, because you always hear of the dreams scenarios where your film plays at a film festival, some executive sees it and loves it and buys it, right? And I think that
doesn't
does still
happen anymore.
Well, I think it might for a couple movies, but if your movie is made on $6,000 and you have no stars, it's definitely not going to happen.
No.
So we met our sales agent in New York, and we just got to talking. He was like, yeah, I'd love to check out your movie. So when we got back, we sent him a link. He checked it out. He's like, yeah, I think I can sell it. So we signed with him at just after Christmas, I believe. And he's a really good sales agent in the sense that he just feels like he's there for the filmmaker. And one of the big things that makes me think that is most sales agents, you sign your movie over to them and they just go get you a deal. And they're like, hey, here's the deal I got. I signed it. It's done. This guy, he's like, you sign your movie over to me, and then I'm going to get you a whole bunch of deals. And it's up to you what you want to take. And I thought that was really, really good. So the deal we ended up getting was not theatrical, which,
Yeah, you're not going to get that.
$50,000 movie with no stars.
Although, did you hear about that what is it, that Zoom movie? They shot it all on Zoom during COVID, and then they four-walled a cinema, I think they spent like $40,000 on four-walling a handful of cinemas. And by spending that much money during COVID, it was number one at the box office for a week.
That's great.
Isn't that funny? I haven't seen it, but it's kind of interesting. I should have them on the podcast.
Yeah, I gotta look that up.
I don't even know what it's called. I heard about it in the ether. Was it like the deal that you signed with them? I'm guessing it was U.S. rights. They're a U.S.-based sales agent, or?
No, it was worldwide. And
Okay.
it's something that we had a couple offers that wanted US only. But through talking to the sales agent and just kind of doing research, everything that we found was if you have a movie of this size and you try and just sell off US rights and then you go and try and sell off the rest of the world rights, people aren't really that interested. If you had a movie with Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem as the lead, then maybe you could section them off. But for a really small movie, you're best, I think, to just go with someone that wants worldwide rights. So that's what we did at the end of the day. And it's also one of those things where there's, even through the distribution process, when you're not selling your movie, when you're just distributing it with the help of a distributor, you're still fairly heavily involved. So I thought, like, what we don't say, I don't want it to be my life anymore. I've been doing this for over 3 years and I'm ready for it to have a life of its own.
Oh, it's gonna stay with you for a while, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, it will, but it would be even more so if we tried to sell US rights and Europe rights and Asia rights, and we were dealing with a bunch of distributors, or we were still trying to get distributors for various regions. I'm like, just give it to someone worldwide. There's going to be work we have to do, but at the end of the day, I want it to have its own life, and I want to go off and make more movies,
Yeah, exactly. So with that deal, I don't know if you're comfortable with talking about it, but with that sales agent, did they offer you any minimum guarantee, or did they just say, look, we're going to put it on these platforms, you'll get this as your split, and it's kind of like up to you to start marketing it, or?
Yeah, there was an advance. So
we don't have to get into specifics, but like if you feel like talk about.
No, yeah, I can't actually, through the contract, I can't give a lot of specifics.
That's how they get you.
But there was an advance, and one of the things I really liked about the sales agent was he said, his philosophy is anyone that won't give you an advance up front, even if it's just a tiny little bit of money, then if they won't give you that tiny bit of money up front, how much are they really going to try and do for your movie, right?
Yeah.
So he was like, anyone I deal with is going to give you an advance, whether it's a little bit, whether it's a medium bit, there's going to be something there. So we did get an advance, and we do get a split on whatever profits come in. We chose to do a lot of the work ourselves. Like, we manufactured DVDs, got all of our artwork in order and everything like that. So we paid more upfront to get a much, much, much higher split on the back end,
right?
Compared to like a licensing deal where you would hand it over to whoever, they would do whatever artwork they want. They can even change the name of your movie sometimes, and then you get like 20% on the back end. We get significantly more than that, but we had to do a little bit of work upfront.
That's okay though, right? Because like you've already gone through making the movie by yourselves. What's a little more work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, like, we had licensing deal offers. One of the biggest things, though, is the thought of taking a licensing deal and having someone market the movie in a way where they think it's best for it to sell. And maybe it would go really well. Maybe they'd hit the nail on the head with the marketing, but maybe they'd change the movie name to like Tap and totally ruin it, right? And I was like, we're already basically past the finish line. We might as well do this last little bit ourselves. And then even if it completely tanks and sells nothing, we still have a movie that is exactly what we wanted to make and comes out that way.
That's great. So do you want to walk me through a bit of the marketing that you did? Like, obviously, I know I found you on Reddit. Do you want to talk about if you saw any bump in sales after the Reddit post that you made? Like, you made a Reddit AMA, like, I made a movie for $6,000, and you answered a bunch of people's questions. I found it pretty interesting, and obviously interesting enough that I reached out to you. But like, did you guys do like sponsored posts? Did you have a social media platform while you were filming that you were able to build upon? Let's walk us through a bit of that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's a $6,000 movie with no stars, right? Like, building a presence is hard. It still is, even.
It's hard if you have stars. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there you go. Like, anytime, it's hard. So one of the things that I had learned from doing party stories was when we started doing party stories, we did a whole bunch of like promo videos in pre-production, like stills and all that kind of stuff. And we put it out to the world right before we started shooting. And as we were shooting, we had behind the scenes this and that, and there was a decent amount of content. But what I noticed is as soon as we wrapped and we started going into editing, there's no, like, who wants to see pictures of you sitting behind a computer every day for 6 months, right? It's super boring. And I found that once we came back, once the movie was done and like we had a trailer, we couldn't really resuscitate the small bit of momentum that we picked up from doing these initial stills and promo videos and stuff.
Right.
So for what we don't say, I intentionally said, like, look, we're not announcing anything we won't we won't put up any stills, we won't do anything until the movie's done. So basically, we showed the movie April 27th to the cast and crew of 2019. And right around then, we just started saying, like, here's a poster, here's a still, slowly started building stuff, because we wanted, once we started submitting to film festivals, we wanted the momentum to be on the upswing, not dead. You know? So once that happened, we started releasing everything. We released a poster, trailer, behind the scenes, this, that, and the other thing. And then when we were in festivals, we had stuff to release, and just we had more content and we could have more of a social media diet for our consumers that could keep. And I actually think that that's the right way to go about it. Now, if you're doing crowdfunding, you probably can't do it that way because you need to raise money before you shoot. But for us, it was absolutely the right thing. And as far as like an uptick in sales from the Reddit AMA, it's hard to say because I did that. It was either the day it came out or the day before. So we hadn't really had a ton of sales yet because the movie hadn't come out. We had some pre-orders and whatnot. But I think, what's the date today?
23rd.
Yeah, so the movie's been out for 9 days now, and it's done significantly better than I would have thought.
So and how much like is your distributor? Are they giving you feedback like these types of posts seem to be working, or whatever you're doing is doing well, or are you in communication with them, or how's that been going?
No, we're kind of on our own in that sense. We don't communicate all that much. And one of the things I really loved about the deal we got is the distributor can't, like most distribution deals, and you hear about this all the time, the distributor will be like, oh, we put 50 grand into your marketing, so you never see a penny, right?
Oh, yeah.
And with our deal, everything they do has to have written authorization from me. So if I don't approve it, they can't charge me anything. So it's really good in the sense that I'm kind of a master of my destiny. I guess you can say. It sucks because it all kind of falls under my shoulders, but it's good in the sense that they can't just claim $10,000 when they spent nothing.
Right. Having autonomy though in this type of world, like I'll tell you, like I've been put through the ringer a few times with deals like that, and there's almost no accountability for them, and any type of like accountability you could inflict on them, you have to do out of pocket, and you might not even see any of it in the end, right? Even if they are in the wrong.
Yeah, totally. And that's actually one way that I'm really glad for this sales agent and the distributor. He's dealt with them a couple times, and one of the first things he said to me was, here's the deal, here's what they're offering. One of the reasons I really like them is because they're very transparent. They give you the numbers every month, and it's all in an online portal. You can go on and see it anytime you want. With this deal, they can't charge you. They can't just say, we put a billboard up here, when they really didn't. Like everything is very transparent, and you'll know everything that's going on. And I was like, okay, that feels right to me, especially because I try to be really honest by everyone else. And if I was a distributor, that's how I would like to do things. I mean, I'm never going to be, and I never want to be.
No.
But that would be how I would do it. So I thought this is in line with how I think work should be done.
Yeah, and obviously it's early now, but having that access to the back end, you'll be able to tell, like, if you notice spikes around certain days or within a few days of something, if marketing campaigns are working, and where you can, put your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the craziest things that's happened so far is the sales agent, he talked me into doing DVDs. Initially I was like, I don't want to do DVDs. Like, I can't name you one person that has a DVD player. I genuinely can't.
You'd be surprised though. Like you'll sell DVDs.
That's what he said too. He's like, just trust me, do this, do a DVD run. And he was like, want to know one of the biggest places? Like, if you're lucky enough to get in there, they can take a lot of them off you. It's libraries in the US.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Libraries? What? And yeah, he pushed for it. Thankfully, I listened to him. And even though everything shut down because of the pandemic, libraries have bought a significant amount of DVDs off of us so far. So, when you have people that are interested in making your movie succeed, that are in your corner, and they'll push you into those things that you're kind of not comfortable with, and thankfully they're right. It's really good.
Did you do anything special for the DVD, or is it just the film itself, or?
No, we did. So obviously, there's the movie, subtitles, stuff like that. There's some deleted scenes, your standard scene selection, and I did a director commentary as
Okay,
well.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always surprised too. Just like DVDs seem to sell well, and I think like I've always thought just like offering something on the back end to with a DVD as incentive, like a behind the scenes, is always. I think it goes well for like you as a brand, as a person, like to hopefully get
Yeah.
people interested in you, maybe as a filmmaker, check out other stuff you've done, or to maybe just keep a tab on you, or at least in the back of their head, maybe they check something else out that you've done. But
Yeah, totally. And I thought that too. Like, there was the option to just have, play movie scene selection. That's it. And I'm
yeah,
like, honestly, I want to give people more because DVD is more than renting it digitally. It's more than buying it digitally. And I feel like a lot of people that are going to buy the DVD from us, whether they've heard us through, our podcast or your podcast or wherever we are, doing film festivals and whatnot. If filmmakers buy these DVDs, they want them because they want to see a little insight into how the movie was made. So it's like, I feel like I owe this to the people that are buying the DVD. And realistically, like putting in a deleted scenes thing, it doesn't take long. Doing a director commentary, the movie's 93 minutes. It took me 93 minutes. Like, it's not that much of a time vacuum. And it makes me feel better that they're paying more for more of a product other than just a case.
yeah, exactly. So with that deal that you have, so I'm assuming you guys had to fund that DVD production on your end, or eh?
Yeah, we did.
But do you have autonomy over that? Did your distributor make you use a certain service, or was he just like, get me 1,000 copies by this day, or?
Yeah, that was it. He's like, we need X amount of copies. They've set a minimum for it, but they're like, go wherever you want. If they show up and they don't work because you went with someone that's dog shit, then you got to make more.
Yeah.
But just make sure they work and get them here by X date. And I thought that was, again, that's really good. You hear about distributors that say, oh, you got to use my guy. And it's like, okay, well, how much is that? They charge $600 a DVD,
Right.
And
yeah, you're always
there's some people that I'm sure are out there to screw you, basically, right?
The casting agent that you have to use their photographer. I've heard of that one a lot.
I know, right? Isn't that scummy?
Yeah. It's like, and then they have a certain rate or whatever. Everyone under that casting agent all has the same poses, the same 3 poses. It's like, okay, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, Matt. Honestly, I my hat's off to you for pulling off a film for $6,000.
Thanks, man.
It looks great, and it seems like you guys got a decent enough distribution deal, which I'll say, like, as an independent filmmaker myself, to shoot something very cheap, to finish it, and to get it like out in the market where people can actually take a look at it, it's an achievement in and of itself. So congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So what's next for you? Do you want to make another film? Are you have something in development once things go back to normal, or?
Yeah, totally. I'm really, really gearing up to make a horror movie next.
That's easier to get into film festivals, I'll tell you that.
And easier to sell too.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, love stories have their niche. There are people that really want them. But what I keep telling people is, do you remember when Napster hit and the bottom end dropped out of music, and just all sales kind of tanked? The one genre that never tanked and people still buy records with is country music. People love buying country CDs.
I don't know
the
why.
fans. It's just what they do. And when the DVD market bottomed out of film, horror movie is country. Like, people that are fans of horror will watch anything.
I wonder if there's a crossover, country and horror movies.
Yeah, I could see it.
Maybe.
And that's not me saying, like, I want to make the biggest pile of shit horror movie ever. It's just, I think I've always really wanted to make a horror movie because I have this vision for a different kind of subgenre of horror that doesn't really exist. And it's kind of the horror, they say make the movie that you want to see.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to see this variant of horror. So I have this script that, I've written tons of scripts since What We Don't Say finished, but I have a script that I'm really, really happy with. And it can be done fairly cheaply. I would love to do it with a bigger budget, but worst comes to worst, I'll just make it for cheap again. And I'm really excited to do this one. I think it's my strongest writing I've ever done, and the idea of doing something completely different than what I've done before also really has me fired up. So hopefully, it's a summer movie as well, so hopefully I can get that done next summer. Hopefully the virus is done.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of prepping for that. I'm looking for a producer right now because one of the, like, I produced What We Don't Say. I had some producers working with me, but I did like 95% of it. And going forward, like, I would love to work with a producer that can take over that main producer role. I don't want to give up producing entirely, but I would love to be able to focus more time on directing and writing and really finding, like, I have a true filmmaking partner in Latif, but I think if we could bring on a true producing partner to really, make us a sweet triad, then I think we could do something really great.
Now, I can hear that, and having somebody else to deal with some of the other business ends or just minutia of stuff that bogs you down in the creative world. I know full well about that too. That's great, man. And if and when you get that next horror done, I'd love to have you back on the podcast to talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, also too, just like now that you've gone through the process and you have all these other relationships you've built up, going through it won't be as scary, or you won't face as many hurdles, hopefully. So that's also,
and you've kind of proved that you can do it, right? I think it's going to be easier than if I was just a writer and I was like, I want to try directing this script. It's like, no,
right.
I made a movie. Like, it's a $6,000 movie. Don't get me wrong. It is not perfect. I am of the strong belief that you cannot make a truly great movie for no money. Like, you can make good ones. You absolutely can. And there are a lot of good ones out there, but to make something truly great for nothing, I don't think it can be really done.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Especially on a first go of it,
Exactly. So that's great, man. Can you let people know? I'll put it at the start of the episode too, but you let people know where they can see the film and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Matt Ralston Film. I'm mostly on Instagram. I think I'm Matt Ralston on Facebook. I have a Twitter. I never really use it. But I'm sure you could find me on there too. Also, I co-host a podcast called Filmcraft Podcast, and we go over how we made movies for no money, like basically step by step. So if anyone's looking for
That's great.
How
for sure a crossover there.
What's that?
For sure a crossover there.
Yeah. So people can check that out too. And then What We Don't Say, if you're in Canada, it's on Vimeo is the main one we've been pumping out just because it was the first one to go live, but it's on Google Play now, a couple streaming services. It went live on Diku the other day.
Cool.
And if you're in America, like Amazon, all the big guys, it's on like Turner Classic Movies and pretty much anywhere in America. But Canada, we kind of get shafted with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I know that one. Well, that's great, man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and enlightening us on how you pulled off a movie for $6,000. I had a really good time chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Lost Commentary, on Instagram at Raiders of the Lost Commentary, and like us on Facebook.
I'll be back.